What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're going to get into a little bit of spoilery expectation and hope for Endwalker. So you guys have not been caught up on the story. I would recommend maybe saving this video for a later date. But this is going to dive deep into what we want to see from the world and story and lore of Endwalker. And I've been keeping my lips shut on this. So this is the first time I'm actually talking about it publicly, because I don't want to sit here and either overhype it or ruin it if it doesn't come to be. But I do have something that I really think is going to either happen or I want to see happen, and that's what I'm going to share today. So just kind of a heads up, yeah, if that's not interesting to you, I totally get it. We'll see you probably in our video tomorrow. Chris, you brought this topic to me. You know, you were like,
I did. I actually talked about it. I recorded a post for Gaming Kinda because of the magic of editing. I don't know which one will go live first. On Gaming Kinda, I talked about it from the perspective of like what I want the story to mean. I play games for gameplay first, and then the story is a secondary element. And so what do I want the act of telling the story to mean for me as a player of a game that I care about? And obviously within the context of I enjoyed the story of Shadowbringers, and I do have some story ramifications, but like they're like, it's like, hey, as long as this is the gameplay outcome, I see 2 or 3 ways they could get there, and I don't really care which one they pick. I'm sure they'll do a great job, and I'm not plugging in the little details. I have a couple of key milestones that I think will get us there, and then I'm curious, like, what do they think the best little minor details? Which character does this? What happens to so-and-so? And so I think at this point we've talked long enough, looking at the timer, that people have had a chance to scramble over their phone and shut it off if they are trying to avoid spoilers. So, yes. So 5.3 wrapped up Shadowbringers.
Yes.
We left the first. We came back home. 5.4 and soon to be 5.5, April 13th, are going to be setting up Endwalker, and 6.0 is going to be wrapping up the story, not just for Shadowbringers, but for 4.0, 3.0, and 2.0, in what sounds like, the way they're phrasing it, the most meaningful way to date.
And on that note, the expansion itself concludes its story too. So not only, like, I mean, it is like
so your final trial, assuming like another 5.0 ending Emmett trial, that trial will be the end of Final Fantasy XIV story-wise.
For what now? And
then 6.1 will begin the next narrative thing. Now, that doesn't mean characters can't survive to come with us. That doesn't mean we can't have presence of the Scions. That doesn't mean there couldn't be an Ascian. It just means it will be something that is meant to be, you can start here and you're okay. That's how I read that.
Yeah. And so here's where I get a little bit, this is, don't put your hat on this one, but what I want to see, what I would love to see, is a real impact on the world. The question that's been bouncing around my head is what's going on with the first, right?
You want the expansion to start with a calamity?
I think it finishes with that, and then like
the end of the 6.0 story.
Yeah, boom, or it's done, and or the rejoining. Heck, it could start with a calamity, but it's
we're 50 play hours of story.
It could begin with a calamity. Like that could be how it starts, and then essentially when it finishes, rejoining Zodiac, Hydaelyn resolved, however that's going to play out. And here's the impact. What happens with the first, Chris? Like the first is going to be this great, awesome experience that we've all enjoyed, but it's not even at stake. It's like it's just over there in its own dimension, doing its own dimensional thing. Maybe. But what if the first got rejoined and merged back into the planet? Like, what if at the end of the expansion, like, oh, by the way, Norvant here is a part of the world.
That's our fault if it happens.
Well, like,
I hope we came over here and messed with things thinking we were making it better.
And we just made it worse.
And we crash it into the source.
Well, regardless, like, at the end of this expansion, Endwalker, it's like, I want to sit here, when you look at 6.1, or when you look at, hey, the story is complete, like, there is a visible aspect to the game's map, its zones. Imagine if we saw Korthus restored to where it was like in 1.0. Korthus is in snow due to the calamity of Bahamut to this day. Imagine if like all that got resolved and you had like Korthus restored to its original state beautiful mountains, peaks, and all the all the like imagine if you would see like these zones kind of even in a way reimagined. That's the impact that I'm talking about.
That's big.
It's massive, right? It would be
That's
just
big.
like you're like, oh yeah, we're getting a battle system switch. And oh, by the way, but when you complete this game, you're like everything changes. Like imagine how shocking that would be if they pulled something like that off. And it's going to be varying degrees. Like I'm not going to sit here and like I said, put my hopes. Like if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be like, this game isn't great. Like, no, but at the end of the day, like I would love to see some real impact, something that when done, it's like, yeah, that was, and then the way you can experience the old zones would be New Game Plus or something like that. But that's just that's my insane theory that I've been keeping tight-lipped until now.
I want there to be a cost.
Yeah.
We have built up quite the tab. The number of times we've made it through with relatively little loss. Even the loss that has been there, even the loss of Menphelia was very intentional. It felt like she stepped in front of a train. So it did not feel like the sudden tragic, grief-stricken wake that would actually happen if you went into a battle and then you went into another battle and then you went into. I have had friends that went and served in the military and then after that went and joined things that the most common name is something like Blackwater, but they went and joined security forces and things like that. And you don't take a group of 5 or 6 individuals and send them into combat zone after combat zone, and at the end of 40 years and they go, and then we're all here and everything's great. Like, even the ones that are there, there's loss in emotionally, physically. In many times you hear stories of them actually losing a person. And here we are fighting, in some cases, things that could be literally compared to gods. And we maintain our cast. Like, Y'shtola was dead for like half a cutscene. Like, it was like 2 seconds last expansion. It hadn't even registered that she was gone. And then it was like, and here she is. Like, it just felt like I went to go see a magic show where like they cut somebody in half and then brought them back on stage. And that takes away the weight of what we're going through. Mm-hmm. And so I think, obviously with Alphino and Alice, one of them gets to go be a sage. Does that mean the other one has to die? Right? Does that mean that we have to? Thancred could have died last expansion. Mm-hmm. Didn't.
Right.
He could have died. Like, so at this point, like, I think we have to see some loss. And as the main character, it obviously can't be us, or can it? Because as we go into 6.1, you start, like, every game, one of the things is they can't kill you off. When you die, you have to be resurrectable, or you have to have the option to restart at the beginning of the instance. But with 6.1 being a restart of a story, we could travel through time, we could travel through space, we could be at a different point. We could go back to when the Asians first were dealing with all the stuff that led to the creation of Zodiac and Hydaelyn and explore that. It has been implied that our soul is something that has been passing through time, seeking hosts. Mm-hmm. We could go pick up at a different point in time in our same soul. And that justifies why we kind of have access to the same classes, why our glamour dresser kind of transfers with us ish. Like, good enough. It's good enough. It lets us suspend belief enough that they don't have to delete your account, and they could let our character die. We could die at the end of 6.0. And like, I would love to have that note make it feel like it had more reality, not because I want to experience loss, but because I want this all to mean something. And if this whole thing was just, you fought a bunch of gods, everybody lived, everybody was happy, everybody got a house, and we all moved on, like, it feels like a dream. It feels like a game. It doesn't feel like when you hear about like stories of old, things that we can learn, that's what I want.
Now, the common theory is that everybody in this game that's had that close brush with death, like you referenced Thancred from, he obviously had that within the Shadowbringers storyline, that it's like everybody, like, those are most likely going to be the pool of people in which that they're the candidates, right? And I would personally love to see something along the lines. Let's say it is Thancred. Let's say Thancred doesn't make it. We're also got Pandemonium with Lahat Brea. Like, how it would be almost in a way fitting, and at the same time a little like, okay, yeah, Square, you got us again. You have an emotional goodbye with Thancred, having had and spent so much time with him. And then essentially, like, he dies, and let's say Pandemonium takes place as an afterlife kind of a moment in which that we go in, and then he gets to show back up at some point in that, having his relation, because he has a close relationship with La Habrea, having been possessed by him, in 2.0. So it's like, oh my gosh, like how kick-ass
as somebody
is
that's a
this?
story skipper, that was very confusing.
Yeah, I know. You're like, what?
You're like, I thought this guy was our friend.
Yeah.
I don't know. What?
And then he's like, nope, I'm an Asian. So ultimately, I think, I want to see something with some stakes. I think the stakes are high. And the question is do they have the guts to pull it off? Do they have the guts to do something that has like lasting impressions and things like that? Because we've seen so many, like even back in 2.0, I don't know, she's fine. And, the most part where, where an arm was lost as opposed to like anybody really dying. And we've seen a couple people die that they've been scions up to this point. And those deaths have been meaningful, but it does feel like we have been on this winning streak for a long time. And like, the question is like,
kill hundreds of things in some of these dungeons and nobody gets injured in a meaningful way.
Do you think it's going to happen before the expansion, or do you think they're going to save anything meaningful for the expansion itself?
So knowing that we have an original raid series, an original alliance raid series, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to set up the new story, because they've got a lot to tell. That gives me the confidence that they really do have enough canvas there to paint us a new story to take us into 7.0. So 6.0 has to wrap everything up. So it's a question of how many things are they really trying to tie into a nice, neat little closure or not? And they have 5.5, 5.55, and 6.0, which will be 40 or 50 hours worth of story. So let's assume each of those are 5 hours worth of story.
Yeah.
They have 60 hours of story to tell. The gap between 5.55 and 6.0 is long, and so it makes sense to put a cliffhanger in there from a pacing standpoint and draw people into the expansion. But that's your runway, and at the end of that runway, that plane has to take off and head to 6.1. That's your runway. You don't get more. And they're the ones who set that. They did not have to do that. But they are the ones who said at the end of that runway is a cliff, and so that's what they have to tell. So in that time, Hydaelyn and Zodiark is going to take a lot of that runway to deal with, if they want to deal with it in a meaningful way and not Game of Thrones it.
Yeah.
Right. So if they want to actually give it the respect it deserves, that's going to have to be a pretty dominant thing within the 6.0 thing. So if characters are also going to have character development that either leaves them as somebody that is changed for 6.1 but is along for the ride, or dies, to give each of those characters respect, I think 5.5 and 5.55 should start to at least lay the groundwork for that, if not start to resolve that. Because 6.0, I would really like to look at the big picture. What's going on with the shards? What's going on with the Asians? What's going on with these freaking primals? And then who are we? Like, where is our place in this? Because there's so many, like, the first time you come across a Freet, he tries to temper you and he can't. And the Amaljago, they say, oh, he must be tempered by another. And Ifrit says he is not tempered by another. And so there's these questions about like, who the hell are we and how are we doing this? And ideally in 6.0, we bring that to at least a close so that we know who the hell we are moving forward. Because I think a lot of who we are and how we are strengthened is by Hydaelyn. And so if we're going to either kill Hydaelyn or because Hydaelyn's purpose is to balance Zodiark. And Zodiark's purpose was to save the world from demise, and in the process swung it too far and was risking the world. If they've run their course and we either need to kill them or merge them or whatever primals can do, if we are a tool of Hydaelyn and her goal is complete, and her goal has to deal with Zodiark, so by default Zodiark's goal is complete, what justifies us still existing after 6.0? And so, I think if somebody needs to die, it needs to be soon. The fact that we've seen the trailer tells us Xenos and Fandango carries on into the expansion.
Yeah, and that's actually was something really surprising that I was not expecting. I thought, especially with his line, like, I have no, like, purpose. Don't try to reason with me. I'm a throwaway was what I heard.
Yeah. I'm a trial fight incoming. Excellent.
Excellent. Oh, I'm also here in 6.0.
Wait, what?
Would you like to see a time jump at all? Like essentially where it's like, hey, the 6.0 closes and then we see some kind of time jump from a narrative perspective, because that was I thought very helpful in a meaningful way with Shadowbringers. It gave us the ability to get reacquainted with characters that we know, but it's like time has passed for them, so there's new things to learn about that journey. That I'm kind of hoping for some kind of time jump at the end of it. We've had one time jump as our character from 1.0 to 2.0, and so I'm kind of hoping that even if my crazy vision doesn't come to pass, that time does jump forward in some way.
So a change in time, either a slight change in time 5 years forward, a drastic change in time, or a jump backward, it does a couple of things for you. So first of all, it gives you a justification to introduce new players, right? Because you weren't in the middle of a conversation. It's weird if you and I pause our conversation and then I call you back and you go, I'm Brian. But like if 50 years go by, you go, hey, I know I may look a little different. It's me, Brian. Yeah. And like, so that it's a justification for new players and for returning players to be reminded of who things are and what concepts are. So I think a time jump is fairly logical just from like a narrative device. It also puts a hard bookend on something. And so like when things are all continuous, it's very easier for us to group that as one event. It's one of the benefits of like off seasons in sports. As those start to narrow, as a fan, you start to kind of, it takes some weight off of like a championship game versus a draft versus preseason. Like that gap is what makes them feel separate and segmented. Yeah. So like I would like to see I would like it to be something significant as well. The selfish part of me wants whatever it is to allow it to put us in a state where for wherever and whenever we are, it justifies us going back and spending more time with the people that I wanted more time with. I wanted a Beast Tribe in the Tempest. I don't care whether they're real people or not. I wanted to know more about Ascians, and at least through Emmett Selk's eyes, we had an opportunity to do that. We did a handful of quests with them, and then that was it. And it's like, but no, I want to go here. I want to be here. And that wasn't a thing we got to do. And so like, I think there's a number of times throughout the story where there's somebody that starts something meaningful and then because of other events becomes very meaningful for us. And we don't get to go back and say, wow, if I'd known how significant you were going to be with me, I would have taken more time. I would have called more. I would have tried to go see a movie with you. And like, we have an opportunity with people in the story to go back and do that now. With a time jump, either people who are still alive jump forward and justify that rekindling, or with a jump backward, going back and visiting with them before they're significant.
Absolutely.
I mean, imagine if we went and saw Thancred as he was first kind of like an urchin, right? Like imagine if we went and imagine if Thancred was a child.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. I'm if anything, I hope, well, I guess if we did go back, that it would be essentially like, what if this event did not ever occur? You know, like if from a time perspective, if you go back to say, all right, they never summoned Zodiark, summoned Hylian, what happened? And then essentially it's kind of an alternate future. And then you can kind of start at those different points and have those experiences. But that gets too, I think, complicated. Go ahead.
So I had my visit with Ethis. He's coming by and kind of carrying me through the lore here. And he kind of explained to me that like our soul is the remnant of a soul that was an Ascian that didn't want Zodiark to be created and didn't want Hylian to be created as a result. So it was like, hey, neither of these things needed to happen. And so it would be interesting from our soul standpoint to go back, if you really want to go back to before Zodiark was created and see, and we would know in the end Zodiark gets created and after that Hylian gets created. We would know those events are coming, but like, why did we feel that they didn't need to happen, and why did others feel they did need to happen? There's a ton of uncertainty. So it depends on how far we go back. We may not need to explore an alternate reality. We may not need to go to another shard. We may be able to just explore events that are so opaque to us that the details really are something we don't know and could justify multiple expansions.
Okay, cool. All right, well, those are my thoughts. I'm really actually excited to hear yours on this one. I know we've been sitting on this topic for a little while. So, guys, if you feel like weighing in, let us know in the comments below.
In the comments down below.
Spoilers. It is a spoiler zone. This is a spoilery video. We do appreciate it if you did take time to listen, and we'd love to know your thoughts as well. So, that's it. For Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. If you didn't, hit that down like, dislike button, whatever it's called anymore. I don't know.
Upside down like.
Upside down like. Be sure to hit that as well. And hopefully we'll see you in our next one. But until then,
take care.